Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Matan Slagter. Matan, thank you so much for being here.
Aaron, thank you for having me.
This is awesome because I think you're our second foreign guest or person who was born out of the U.S. I think maybe third, but first from Israel. So my heart is there. So thank you for being here.
Of course.
This is a show about hustle, and I feel like I always say you're the ultimate hustler, but I got to dive into a bunch of things because you came to a different country, worked. We're going to get into what gave you the idea of getting into this ridiculous industry that I also happen to be in, and then pivoting from the carrier side or from working at a carrier side to starting your own thing, which is awesome. And I'm proud to be a partner of that. So first and foremost, take us back. What do we need to know about Matan, your upbringing that you think propelled you to be the hustler and just to grind and, traveling and now jumping on a podcast recording to build a brand. So what do we need to know about where it all started?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It's a little bit of an enigma to me because I think about my upbringing. I grew up in Israel. I moved here freshman year of high school. So I did high school in the U.S. But before that, Israel, and normal childhood. I don't think I was pushed too hard to do anything, but I do remember from a very young age feeling like, anything was possible. Sky's the limit. You just have to work for it. And I just don't remember someone talking to me about it. I just remember having this feeling in me that stayed with me. So it's an enigma. I can't tell you that anything special happened in my upbringing, but I can tell you that I've had this thirst, and when it happened, it all made sense.
I'm going to get back to that, but I just want to pivot to another question because you just brought this up. What is it like moving to a different country before the beginning of high school? I imagine that's a challenging time.
Yeah, it was a very challenging time. I think I was conned into it. I didn't know I didn't know much back then. I thought it was like in the movies. You come in and you go into this like American school, and
girls love the accent.
Yeah,
and then it just goes from there.
And a lot of cheerleaders and all of that. And I came here and I'm like, oh, I made a huge mistake. This is going to be tough. I got to learn a new language. I did know English, but I had a thick accent. I kind of thrown into this new world. And back then, I was very much an introvert. I think by nature, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. That changed over the years. My wife is an extrovert, so I've been with her for almost 20 years. So that changed me. But back then, I was very shy. It was very difficult, but I made a few close friends in the beginning. That was probably the most important thing, and did okay at school. Not so well. I didn't come in prepped and understand what you need to do to get to a good college and all of that. So it took a little bit of time, but I had a foundation in math, and that was good. It was a lot of fun. I look fondly on my high school years.
But what is that? What is that transition like? Meaning, you come in the first day of freshman year. You're from a foreign country. Yes, okay. You spoke the language, but I imagine you probably weren't super comfortable with that being the only language that now you're going to be speaking the first 6 hours when you're dropped in school. So what is that? And then how do you said you look fondly on it. I think that means that you had to evolve that over time, right? And learn to adapt and enjoy it.
Totally. We moved the first week of summer vacation. So I had an entire summer in New Jersey without friends, without knowing anybody before even the first day of school. And I remember I was watching a lot of TV, and there was no subtitles in Hebrew. So, that was kind of, that helped. And I remember one day because my mom worked for a bank in New York. She got the job for us moving in. It was the Israeli bank. And she came back in the bus. She's like, oh, I ran into this lady, and she has a younger brother your age. And she introduced me to this guy, Asaf. He was also Israeli, but American Israeli, born and raised here. And we became friends over the summer, and he introduced me to this guy, Pavel. So those were my first two friends. They didn't stay my friends because once I got into high school, we just kind of drifted away, and I got into a group of, I was a pretty nerdy guy. I got into this group of Russians It was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. But that's how it started. And it was difficult. I remember, it's funny. I remember the first time I looked at numbers, and all of a sudden I read numbers in English. It took like 2.5 years. It's when I was driving from getting my permit and staying at the speed limit, and all of a sudden I didn't read the numbers in Hebrew. I read them in English, and I realized, oh, yeah, I guess I'm here long enough now. I'm starting to think in English. So that was interesting. That was interesting.
And so, but you fell into it, and then you ended up liking high school, which I think is important, and then you ended up working at an insurance company. I think right out of college. Is that correct? As an actuary, did I make
Yeah,
that up?
so I always had this thing. Already in high school, I knew that I wanted to study to be an actuary because my father was really, he knew I was good at math. He was giving me all these magazines that says top 10 jobs in the U.S. Actuary, look, it's always top 10. They're so happy. So I went. So
Little
when
did you know, they're not so happy. Good job, but not so happy. But anyway,
actually, as a matter of fact, I think actuaries are pretty happy. I think they're very narrow, and they if you do just the actuarial thing, it's not a stressful a job. If you're the chief actuary for a company, that's one thing, or if you're the chief reserving actuary, that's one thing. But if you're in the front, down, making creating models, to be pretty passionate about it. It was true. I didn't have the character to stay doing that, so I kind of evolved from there. But I knew in high school that I wanted to be an actuary, or at least try it. So I applied for colleges that had actuarial majors, math with an actuarial kind of specialty. And I was I took my first actuarial exam already senior year of high school, I think. So, and yes, right, I had a few internships with an insurance company. Actually, a consultant, Mercer was my big internship. And then my first job out of college was a reinsurance company, SCORE, pricing. I was a pricing actuary for life insurance. So I would price blocks of thousands of life insurance business that we would reinsure from direct writers. It was pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting.
I have a bunch of things to say about this, but the first is I find it amazing how what interests one person can totally not interest another person. Like you clearly, when you talk about being an actuary or studying it, it's like, yeah, you're passionate about it, and it was fun. And I've never heard someone talk about numbers in a fun way, and the smile and the joy. It's just funny how for a lot of people they'd be like, actuary, that sounds boring, or I feel like I've have a
Well,
life experience that does it. But I feel like that's also part of the hustle is developing. And I've said, I think on every single episode that it's about developing your hustle and what works for you in whatever way that could be. And that could be,
totally.
we'll get into starting a company, which probably was a big leap and probably a totally different vibe and hustle. But, being a high school kid whose father told him that this is a good job, to then finding your passion there.
My father, at some point in Israel, was an insurance agent before I was born. So I knew he had background in it. So he knew about the actuarial thing for a long time. And he kind of pushed me in that direction, which ended very well for me. I did the actuarial thing for like 2 years out of college, and I finished all the exams. I went through all of it, but when I joined the AIG after SCORE, after 2 years at SCORE, I did everything besides being an actuary. Everything, yeah, in operations and underwriting and portfolio management, and then chief of staff to one of the CEOs. So really, kind of more of a generalist roles, more in the business. Not saying that actuaries are not in the business. So it was not in my DNA to stay an actuary, but I will say this. I think one of the biggest arbitrage opportunities for younger people is to appreciate how cool insurance is. Not actuarial science, insurance. I think it's one of the coolest industries. I don't think it attracts the best talent out there. The best talent out there thinks that, being a tech startup is cool, being, I don't know, whatever is cool. It's not insurance. Insurance is never the first thing. So unless you're born into it or someone in your family pushes you into it, it's not like, yeah, I want to be an insurance agent. If I could go back in time, Aaron, I would have started an insurance agency right out of college.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. I'm happy you didn't. But anyway, but it's one of the things that I'm actually very passionate about. The industry is amazing, and there's so much diversity and so much for everybody needs insurance. But forgetting about that, and forgetting about the fact that a person can earn a good living, you don't have to work 20 hours a day. You don't have to be that smart. Yeah, I think you have to be smart. I don't think you have to be that smart. You don't have, to do act. We leave the smarts to the actuaries. But I also think that it's one of those things where if more people, you're 100% right, if more people would be introduced to it, they'd realize that it's a great, stable, and steady career. And what I find interesting about the insurance industry in general is a lot of the people who you meet at the startups or who are successful in the industry find it after their first job when they're looking for that level of consistency, in that they say, the joke I've told a few times on the podcast, or it's not really a joke, it's actually a true story, is one of my closest friends who's an agent in Alabama. So he became an insurance agent because he was working with his father, who's an electrician, and they were working at someone's house in the summer, sweating in the guy's attic. And every day the guy whose house they're working in goes to play golf. So he says to his father, "What does that guy do? Like, I want to play golf. I want to do what that guy does." And he's an insurance agent. And that's how he became an insurance agent. But I think that a lot of people, as they mature, they say, he might not be a billionaire, he might not be the richest guy on the block, but that guy, my neighbor, or that lady, they're 90% of the time they're at their kids' events. They're not running around on Sundays most of the time and things like that. They earn a decent living. I can see that they're relatively comfortable, and you have to hustle. But I think it's a great career choice. So I'm glad that at least you've come around to it.
100%. And I think that the trap is that it's not a new industry. It's not a sexy industry. It's nothing. And people like new. If they realize how cool, you think insurance, like insurance, I don't know, who cares about insurance? But you think like risk, the idea of like dealing with risk, and in different industry, you want it to be complex, go into some complex commercial risk, some cool stuff, go niche. You want it to be, mainstream, go personal lines, whatever. You get great retention. People don't realize that it's recurring and recurring and recurring. It's like unreal to me how much of an arbitrage there is for smart people who want to get into that industry.
Well, we're gonna clip that for sure, because we're gonna use that as insurance marketing. So you go from being, I think, more on the operations side of AIG, right, to deciding that you want to start a company. How does that happen? And what was the aha moment for you in that maybe my hustle's a little bit different? Not that that was necessarily bad, but that maybe my path, in the future is a little bit different, and this is the road I want to take.
I'll just say this going back. I always had ideas for businesses. And as a matter of fact, in high school, I had a little candy business. I was selling candy to so many people. We had people selling candy for us. And I sold other things, doesn't matter what. But, I always did things. And I think it was always in me, like I said before, the idea that I want to start something on my own. Now, at one point at AIG, I had a pretty good career there, worked hard. After I was a chief of staff to the CEO, I got a role, head of market disruption for all of AIG's essentially consumer lines of business, which included personal lines, which I think they sold that recently in the US, included accident and health, travel, warranty. And in that role, this was at the inception of InsurTech, when it became really popular to become an InsurTech company. We just started Lemonade and Hippo and Root and all these companies. And I met them when they were young, and some super smart people doing really cool things, starting new businesses. And it kind of lit me up. And every day I would come back home, talk to my wife, and I had so many ideas. They weren't Armadillo. They weren't the current conception of what Armadillo is today. They were different ideas, different businesses. One was in life insurance. One was in anti-bullying for kids, which is a cause something I really believe in, and maybe we'll do in the future. Different ideas. And she heard me bicker for like 5 years. And then COVID hit. And we agreed that, and not only did COVID hit, a few things lined up. I met a co-founder. I met people who were willing to put money into me. They believed in me more than the idea. They said, "We're going to invest in you with time. We just need to decide what to do." So I sort of slowly things were lining up. Talked to my wife. I said, it's going to be a little bit of a risk. We have 2 kids. By then we already had 2 kids and a home and a mortgage. And we made the jump. It was a family decision. And we made the jump. And Armadillo is my first true startup. Even though I've started things within AIG, I've always been successful with that stuff. We just never my own, And with everything lining up, made the jump and started Armadillo. And I think I was lit up because of InsurTech, really. It was in me. And then the InsurTech thing kind of got me thinking that we can start a business and do it better for more responsibly than some startups that come from the outside, because I am an actor and I am an insider and I understand how important it is to have a healthy loss ratio and build a profitable, disciplined business. Yeah, but using technology to accelerate the growth of that business. So I thought we could do it. I really believed in myself, and my wife believed in me, and then my partner, our chairman, believed in me, and kind of jumped, and here we are.
Isn't it amazing how you were working in disruption, and that disruption stimulated in you disruption personally and professionally?
It's so true.
Isn't it funny how and I think, by the way, that so many people would get scared off by the word disruption. I think it's by the way admirable that AIG, such a large and established company, would even have a position like yours to say, let's find out what's out there and what's shaking up the market, and we want to be a part of it, or we want to at least know about it. But I just think that so many people would limit their hustle or would limit their dreams by saying I'm at a very stable company in a very stable position at a very unstable point in my life financially, as you're saying, with little kids. I have 5 little kids, so I feel it. And yet that bug was just like, I got to be a disruptor. I got to. And it's amazing how a lot of people would not take the leap and would not do it. So
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable, and sort of once you take the leap, there's almost like there is looking back, but there's no looking back when you're in a new stream, and that stream is going to take you somewhere different. And I'll tell you the big thing that pushed me at the end, in addition to my wife's support, was thinking that in 30 years, because it's always in my mind to start something, and I never did it. If I'm going to look back and say I'd never tried it, whether that's going to make me bitter about not having tried. So at this point, for me, Armadillo was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it all the way. And we're doing very well. I think we're going to be very successful. But even if we're not, I'm going to feel very full with the fact that I went for it full force. I'm giving it my whole.
100%. And by the way, I'm not going to jump on the soapbox on this, on the education and the American universities and traditional education, traditional models, because I have a lot to say about it. But I do think that one of the other things is you have a person, correct me if I'm wrong, but a person has the ability to take those risks, quote unquote, and to chase their dream when they've tried the stable thing, when they've been in it and when they've realized and said, okay, I know what this is. I know what a lot of people say I should be doing. By the way, don't discount the fact that an actuarial degree is not a bad degree to have if God forbid, everything doesn't work out. That you might not be at the position that you were in before, but it's a career that you can go back into, if you will, even though you're out of it for a bunch. You know what I'm saying? But that experience can always go back to it. And I think that a lot of people think that the disruption in a person's life has to happen right away. And maybe the best thing is to find something that can get the wheels turning until you find that one moment and jump on it.
I totally agree, man. I think it's all about experiences and having a stable job, working for a high caliber insurance company like AIG, SCORE, learning from the best of the best in the industry was foundational to who I am. I think the startup thing is not for everybody. I get why it wouldn't be for everybody. It's extremely stressful. There are 20 things that happen every day. 2 are good, 3 are bad, and everything else is in between, block and tackle. And I think it's a lot. It's a lot for most people. So I can't even pretend that I knew what it would be like jumping into it. But the fact is, I kind of believed that it was in me, and I had a foundation. And I know some people jump right into the startup thing, and some are successful, some are not. But from what I understand, is people who've been in the industry and then jump to start a business. It's actually an advantage. Success rate is higher.
What have you learned about your own hustle now that you've started the company?
You mean about me and how I approach?
And just about like everything that you thought a startup was that it isn't. You said 20 things at once. I imagine that you didn't think that you'd be dealing with X.
Yeah.
But your hustle tells you and your drive tells you that you can deal with it and you will just figure it out. So what have you learned about that?
The first thing I've learned that you start a company, it's only you, or if you have a co-founder, you and your co-founder, and if you're successful very quickly, it becomes way more than just you. So it's a very quick development of more and more people, and you don't think about it, but you have to evolve very quickly, or otherwise you're probably not thinking about things right. Initially, you're doing everything, but at some point, you want to build a very good team because if you're gonna have an exit or a good outcome, you want to build a business that can last, and you want to build a great culture. So I didn't anticipate how quickly that would happen. We have 30 employees now, so it's more about leadership and inspiring them to do the best that they can for the business, as opposed to trying to do the best that I can alone. Just multiply the effect. So that was one thing. The second, the stresses of having other people's capital. Investors rely on me. I think I'm handling that very well. I think we have great investors. We didn't raise from family or friends, so that's off.
Thanksgiving is okay.
So that's good. I don't need to worry about that part of it. But we have individual, high net worth individuals that are invested in the business, and it's still individuals. And then there's some funds and fundraising and all of that. That's stressful. Then you lose your first important key person. And when you're a small company, everybody's key. Everybody's doing a lot. You feel like you're punched in the gut. And then you lose the second one. It feels a little bit better. You're like, okay, I've felt that before. By the way, we have a great culture, and we haven't lost that many people. But it happened because we're that big, and it's gonna. We're not huge, but it's gonna happen more and more. I just didn't anticipate how quickly it would evolve. I guess that's what I would say. In my hustle, what I've learned is that I'm a very flexible thinker, very open minded. I'm not stuck in my ways. I understand that I need to evolve as a person in order to lead this company through this.
Were you always like that, or you think that the flexibility came? Because I find that most of the founders that I talk to, that is key. Key is the ability to delegate, figure out what you can delegate, figure out what you're good at, and figure out what other people will be better. That's how you get to scale. And that comes with flexibility. Yet a lot of people don't even realize that they have that flexibility within them until they have. And there's that crucial moment where if you weren't flexible and you held to the rigidity, the whole team would fall apart around you because that culture wouldn't be built. But you have that defining moment of flexibility and evolution that then probably makes a huge difference. Forget about for you, but for the company.
Yeah, that was a big question mark for me. I always knew that I was an open-minded individual and a flexible thinker. What I didn't know is whether I would be able to trust people to do things and build a team that I trust to do things. And what I've learned about myself is that if someone is really good and they're working at Armadillo, they're really good. I can trust them. If they're not, I can't. So which is good, which is exactly what I think I should be at this point. So I learned that I can trust, a great leadership team. Thankfully we've built a very, very, very strong team. We're still small enough where I'm in a lot of stuff, more stuff than I should be in, but we can't afford to hire, I don't know, a legal counsel. We can't afford to hire a bunch of inside stuff. So that's normal. I managed a small team at AIG. Here I'm managing people much more directly, much more holistically. So a lot of new things that I've never experienced before. I'm learning a lot about my leadership skills. And I think if I may judge myself, I think I'm okay. I think there is growth, but I think I'm already at least average, if not more. I have a lot of empathy for people. I understand how people feel, and I understand that people want to grow. I understand all of it, and that's intrinsic to me. So that makes me a little bit better to begin. Just getting into.
And by the way, I don't think that self-awareness is ego. So I think that's important, and your track record has definitely proven it. I don't usually do this on the episode, but I'm a huge fan of Armadillo. I'm a huge fan of what you're building, and why should every listener engage with Armadillo, buy the Armadillo product? I literally have never done this before, but you know that I love everything about Armadillo. I'm a customer. I have reaped the benefits of a claim. My siblings have, and so just tell us, everybody. I want people to worry less so they can hustle more, and I think Armadillo is a big part of that. So, if you will, give us the 30-second elevator pitch before we get to the last question.
I think it's super simple. If you're a homeowner, you're listening to this, you're a homeowner, and it's not your thing to fix things. It's not your thing to deal with the stuff that breaks down in the home. You're really good at everything else, loving your family, being with your family, hanging out with them, working, whatever it is. You don't want to deal with the things in the home. That's where Armadillo comes in. You get an Armadillo plan. We help you find qualified technicians for anything that breaks down in the home. We cover most things, really, appliances and systems. In the future, we hope to expand to even more than that, and we'll deal with it for you. So you could think of that as like an extended team for your home. And there's also financial coverage. So HVAC goes out, can be pretty expensive. Refrigerator has to be replaced, can be pretty expensive. Some repairs can be smaller, but it's if you don't want to deal with the hassle, I think Armadillo is a great plan. It's kind of like AAA for homeowners, but for the home. So that probably answers it.
But what I will say, and that I'm in the insurance business, so some will say that some of the that I deal with competitors, even though I don't, of yours. The fact that the company is still small, if you're listening to this, it's still going to be a small business by the time you listen to this. The claims team is intimate. They're good. They care. And when these kind of things break down in your home, it's a stressful situation. And it's more frustrating than stressful. Obviously, someone who, God forbid, their house burns down, that's far more severe than anything that Armadillo is covering. But I think that people jump into that and they say, okay, this is a crazy moment and I'm just going to hustle through it. But I think that Armadillo takes care of a lot of the frustrations so that people don't end up angry at their children or spouses or things like that. So thank you for that.
Our head of claims lives in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Their claims manager is in Atlanta, Georgia. Every claims rep is here in the U.S. They're a wonderful, wonderful team. So you'd probably talk to someone who I interact with daily. It's right on there. And the other thing I'd say, a lot of people work from home. We've seen a lot of success there. People who work from home just don't want to deal with that stuff. They want to focus on business. We have employers that offer Armadillo as an employee benefit. That's also an area. If you guys are listening to this, you're in the HR department. All right, enough advertising. Enough advertising.
Yeah. We have but I think it's important. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational, inspirational quote, what it means to them, and how it inspires their hustle. So, Matan, the floor is yours, and thanks again for being here.
Make yourself obsolete. I met today for lunch one of the best bosses I've ever had. I'm not going to mention his name. I don't know if he would be comfortable with me mentioning his name, but unbelievable individual. And I worked for him about 10 years ago. And he said, make yourself obsolete, Matan. And I think it's one of the best. It just stuck with me. And I told him today that that quote just is him in my mind. And it applies in my world. I no ego. If investors don't like Matan, that's great. But if I could build a team that can take this business forward, so much of the Matan is not required, I think we've done our job. Make yourself obsolete.
And I think that so many people would say that is not hustling, but I think that that's the greatest definition of hustle, is realizing and defining where your best service and where your customers are best served. And if that's being obsolete, then that's being obsolete. So
that's right. We'll move on to the next.
Matan, thank you for being here. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good, and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.